Hello everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. So here we are, Monday. Let me just, what's going on here? Alright. For those of you who have never joined me on Monday before, this is when I tell my subscribers ghost stories that they send it to me here on this email address, and we create a look based around a way to die. In like a fun way. This series is very much based on Bailey Saren's Murder Mystery and Makeup Mondays. Well, I'm very sure you know who she is already, but I'll always leave a link below for her channel. Today I want to create a look. I have all these colours in front of me from Beauty Creations, and basically there's loads of colours, but they had this whole set which I just had to buy, and I bought this with my own money. It's an eye primer, an eyeliner, and an eye pencil, but they come in all these amazing colours, and there's the matching eyeliner, eye primer, and eye pencil for every single one. So here's how I died today. Okay, I was like, you know what, I'm feeling the sun's coming out. I keep blaming the sun for death. I'm feeling really like summer vibey. I want to get all my clothes. Let's say not all my clothes are black. Let's pretend they're white or blue. And I want to tie-dye all my clothes. And I spend the whole day tie-dyeing in my bathtub. My back's hurting. I'm hunched over like this. I'm inhaling, I don't know, what do you tie-dye with? Fumes? I'm inhaling tie-dye fumes. And eventually I get dizzy from tie-dye. I'm like, I can't take this anymore. And I land in the bath tie-dyeing, my face tie-dyed. Now, I'm not doing tie-dye detail because I can't, but I'm taking inspiration from all the colours, and we're doing a colourful look today. I've already done my skin because it's a little bit sensitive and I don't want to keep wiping off my face, and I film like 3 videos in a day. It can have quite the effect on my skin. So if you have any ghost stories yourself, paranormal experiences, just weird experiences, it don't have to be a ghost. Sometimes humans are scary. Send them to this email address right here. You can send them in video form, audio form, just like an email, like a normal typed email. Please go ahead and do that. So should we start with our first story? This one is just called My Ghost Story. Simple. Wait, what do I do? Where shall I begin? So it says, apologies for my bad grammar. English is not my first language. You can speak another language. You're a genius. Never apologize. Since I was a child, I've always been a believer of a paranormal. I always feel a presence with me, no matter where I am or if I'm alone or not. One night, I was around 13 years old. I saw my dead grandfather and dead cousin in my dreams. I'd never met my dead cousin, as she passed away years before I was even born, and I can barely remember how my grandpa looked, as I was only 7 when he passed away. I would only see him during the summer holidays, if I went back to the country my parents are from. In my dream, they are calling out to me, saying I should watch out. I woke up in the middle of the night. I was crying, and I had no idea why. I tried going back to sleep, but I felt watched. It felt as if someone was pulling my hair. So I sat up. The lights in the hallway were still burning, so I could see a little. And I saw shadows going under my bed. I froze for a few seconds. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out my mouth. I laid back down on my bed, thinking that it was all in my head, but I felt something pull on my sheets. Stop! I couldn't sleep for a few days after that. Those paranormal appearances became less frequent until my mum, my sister, and I moved to an older apartment. My mum and my sister loved this place, but I had a strange feeling. I was only 14, so my word wouldn't have mattered anyway, and it wasn't like I could move out to a different place. Whenever I was alone, the lights would flicker randomly. It never happened when my sister or my mum were around. I would hear footsteps beside my bed, behind me in the shower, or just somewhere in the apartment. It couldn't be my neighbours upstairs because these footsteps were coming from beside me or behind me. Doors would randomly open, curtains would open themselves, even if I closed them, and clipped them back to make sure they wouldn't open. It still happened. I would experience a lot of sleep paralysis and see weird orbs a lot of the time. I asked my mum if she had the same experiences, but she said no, saying that it was all in my head. The final straw for me was when I heard someone whisper in my ear in my native language, "You're going to burn with us." I called my dad, and since that day, I've barely spent the night at my mum's house. Just being there makes me want to leave immediately. All these things have stopped now that I stay at my dad's place. First of all, thank you so much for your story. Second of all, that threat, when they threaten you, that's the last straw. Like you said, you can't, I mean, how dangerous can it get? Thank you so much for that story, and again, I hope everything is still fine for you. Okay, so next up we have an audio story, and this story is called A Message from the Universe. Ooh. Okay, let's go. Why do I love being scared like this?
Hi, Robert. Thank you so much for all that you do. I really enjoy your channel. I only just started watching it recently and just found your ghost story segment and thought it was the coolest thing. I love listening to it while I drive, and I also love hearing your makeup tips. It's also made me a lot better at doing my own makeup. I'm also really excited to see more people around my age on YouTube. I'm 29 and have been a humble YouTuber for, dare I say, like 15 years now. Oh my God, I feel so old. Anyway, I just do little singing videos. They're not anything I take too seriously, and I'm not very consistent at posting. But it's something I really enjoy doing, and I'm really happy to see other people my age doing things on YouTube that they enjoy also. Anyway, to the story. So this story is about the first dream that I ever remember having. I was about 4 or 5 years old, and since this first dream, I've had many other unsettling dreams that may really classify more as nightmares. As a little girl, I was a little bit of a tomboy and had a boy best friend that we'll call Jared to protect his privacy. Jared didn't have many friends, and I went out of my way to connect with him because I didn't like seeing other kids feeling lonely. The very first dream I can remember having was of him and I playing in a treehouse in the middle of a dark woods. The treehouse was unusually high, maybe 50 feet off the ground, and only consisted of one room made completely out of wood that looked like old yard fencing. I remember looking out of the only window and being able to see a red river with human organs floating down the stream. I was looking out of the window. My friend Jared said my name, and I turned to look at him. He told me that I was his best friend, and I hastily replied that he was mine too. He then told me that he wanted to show me a trick, and that it was only something he could share with his best friend. I squared my body to look directly at him, and told him to show me his trick, that I was ready. Jared looked directly into my eyes, opened his mouth, and grabbed his whole tongue tightly in one of his little fists. And in one brisk motion, he yanked so hard that he ripped his tongue out of his mouth and collapsed, bleeding to death on the floor of the treehouse. I remember seeing the blood creep through the cracks in the floor of the treehouse and his eyes going dark and losing all light before I woke up terrified. After first grade, Jared and I didn't really stay in touch, but almost 25 years later, he looked me up on Facebook and sent me a message. Our conversation was shallow and light, as you would expect, and then out of the blue, he tells me that he has struggled with suicidal thoughts his whole life, and that every time he's gotten close to acting on those thoughts, that he would think of me and the friendship we had as kids. I was shook for multiple reasons, but one of the biggest being recalling my dream many years earlier where he ripped his tongue out in suicide. This made me feel like the universe gives us messages that we may not always understand or even really know what they are until much later, and only if we're paying attention.
Wow. Oh my God. Thank you so much for sending it in. I'll link your YouTube channel below if anyone wants to check it out as well. That's insane. And what a kind of like, I mean, when someone tells you that, it's kind of difficult to process, but to know that you've been part of a happy memory and a happy time, you know? And how nice to know that you can be there for someone without even realizing how much you've been there for them. Thank you so much for that story. That was terrifying and at the same time a nice story. Okay, so moving on to our next story. And this one is called Haunted Village. Oh, I don't like villages at the moment. Okay, let me just cut this crease. Actually, maybe, yeah, let me cut this crease. Hi Robert, my name is Michaela and I am from a small country, Slovakia. Near my hometown is a village called Krvavé šenky? I think that's how you pronounce it, which basically means a bloody pub. Sounds good. This village has a scary history. Everything started in this one pub, where in 1848 the owners of the pub gave the customers a meal and something to drink, and then they killed them. Afterwards, they stole and divided their goods and money. Another case which was connected with the village was the death of 3 little girls in one of the hostels. And in more recent history, the mafia was forcing their victims to dig their own graves in the village, and then they would kill them. Nowadays the village is empty and just 3 people live there. There are rumours that the village has moved out because of the bad economy, but I see it more as a curse from the past. I went recently to the village with friends at night by car, and already at the beginning of the village I felt a bad energy. We drove down one of the roads of the village, and the first thing we saw was a cut head of a doll toy in the middle of the road watching us turn back. I almost had a panic attack when my friend went over the head of a doll with his car. I told him to turn and go back. I was trying to learn even more about the village after this experience. I heard from one taxi driver that his colleague went to that village on one really rainy day to pick up a woman. Oh, no. She was standing in the dark under an umbrella when he arrived. She then got into the back seat of a taxi. He was a talkative person, and he was trying to talk with her, but he didn't get any response. So he thought she was not in the mood to talk. But when he turned his head, the seats were empty. He pulled over, checked the back seat. The woman wasn't there, just a splash of water on the seat, and on the floor of the car, she'd vanished. I hope I will never step foot in that village again. Absolutely fucking not. Here's the deal, right? Spirits that have a whole village to themselves. No humans living there, changing their furniture or decorations, you know? You don't have to bring people all the way from outside places to haunt them. Okay, so now the time has come, as is custom, to have Marcus read us a story. I'm recording, yeah? Good. Yeah? Good.
Hi! This first story is called The Devils Carriage. This happened to me a couple of years ago in Morelos, Mexico. My dad and I went to visit my grandmother, who at the time was sick. She needed 24/7 care, and we wanted to help my aunts and uncles with her care. My dad and I slept in the same room. I would sleep close to a window that was facing the street, and my dad would sleep on the couch that was in the room. I usually fell asleep with my back against the window. I was profoundly asleep when all of a sudden I woke up because all the neighbourhood dogs were barking and all the roosters were singing. It was 2 a.m. It sounded like chaos. I opened my eyes and realised all the hairs on my body were standing up. I listened closer. I could hear what seemed like a carriage and a horse. I could clearly hear the metal clanking and the hooves of the horses clopping. The curiosity in me wanted to turn around and peek out the window to see what it was, but my body was paralysed with fear. With my peripheral vision, I looked over to my dad, who seemed fast asleep. I started to recite psalms from the Bible, but I was having a hard time remembering them, even though I know them all by heart. I had no choice but just to wait until the carriage had completely passed by. Once all the animals stopped making noises, I knew I was in the clear. I looked up and of course nothing was there anymore. The next morning I asked my dad if he had the same experience as me. I didn't even finish asking my question because his eyes turned wide open and he answered, "Yes, I also heard the carriage." I was in shock because that made it real to me. My dad told me that growing up, everyone that lives down the street heard the carriage at least once in their lifetime. It is said to be the devil making his night rounds, picking up lost souls, and that no one has ever been able to see him because they're usually paralysed with fear. I never believed in evil until that night. Okay, this second story is called Astral Projection. Hi Robert. This story is about my niece. Grace has always been an extroverted child. Ever since she popped out of my sister, she's been a giggly, dancy, loving girl who we all adore. But one day that changed. When she was about 3 or 4, my niece completely changed after waking up one morning. Out of the blue she was timid, afraid of everything and everyone, and would not respond to her own name. She was even terrified of her own mother. This went on for around a week. Grace progressively became less scared, but would not respond to her name still, and told my sister she was not Grace, and that her name was Maria. Grace was always an eccentric kid, but we all knew something was very wrong. When Grace continued to act shy and scared, my mother called someone from her old spiritualist church, and they put her onto a well-known medium from the area. He came to the house after being told what was happening and met with Grace and my sister. He told her he knew immediately what had happened. Grace, being the adventurous soul she was most likely prone to astral projection. This is where the soul or energy leaves the body while you are sleeping and travels around. Grace had potentially wandered too far and left her physical self open for too long, and the spirit of this little Maria has stumbled upon it and woken up in a strange place, surrounded by strange people. He told my sister not to worry, that he would find her and guide her back into her body tonight. At this point there are probably a lot of skeptics listening to this, and to be honest I felt the same way when this was happening. But I shit you not, the very next morning Grace was immediately back to herself, singing, dancing, chatting up a storm, and not afraid of anything or anyone. I have no other explanation for this, other than what was explained. We have no idea who this Maria is or where she went after that, but I do hope she was able to find peace. Thank you for reading. I hope you are sufficiently creeped the frick out. Love your videos and can't wait to see your next death-inspired glam beat. Well, there we go then. I did some astral projection the other day and I ended up in the boot of someone's car, surrounded by bags of poo.
How did I know that's where it was gonna go? Thank you, Marcus, and thank you for those stories. First of all, the devil. Imagine growing up and it being like, the rite of passage, living on that street that one day you're going to wake up completely paralyzed and the devil's going to be fucking running around looking for dead, lost spirits. And that astral projection, right, everyone tell me, whether you believe in astral projection or not, tell me you didn't have a dream when you were younger, where you floated out of your body and floated downstairs and just saw your parents doing normal shit like ironing and watching the TV. Like, I swear that is something that is so common. Imagine, though, being told, like, you know what, your daughter, she went too far. That's somebody else in your child. I'd be like, get my daughter back, please. What am I doing? Stories. Oh, right. Oh, no. Oh, okay, here we go. A last story today. I can't do this. My first dog came to visit me. Now listen, if this is your first time here and you haven't experienced me reading a story about dogs before, I tend to cry, so I'll try and keep it together for this one. I have 2 dogs myself, so these stories just get you in about any pet, get you in a mind frame of, no, what if that was mine? And it's really upsetting. Okay, let's go. Let's do this. I love watching your ghost stories and Makeup Mondays, and I have wanted to contribute a story for a while. For the last half of my senior year in high school, I was living alone. My parents had built a house in the next province and left me to finish school. At this point, the house is just an empty shell, but still very full of memories. Seeing it empty always made me a bit sad though, as I had grown up there and did miss the togetherness of living there with family. Whew. This is a house, here we go, where my parents got me my first dog. Her name was Princess, and she was a sassy black and white Bichon Shih Tzu, a porky little girl who was spoiled rotten, but had a lot of love to give and lived for cuddles at bedtime. But she had a bad habit of chewing on my clothes in the night, so like a lazy teen, I tended to just close my door rather than pick her clothes up. Every other night, while she was laying in bed, I would hear her toenails clickety-clacking their way to my room. She would see that my door was closed and let out a big, sassy sigh, then push her body against the door as she laid outside of it. This was a ritual, little toenails, big sigh, and the door being pressed against the jamb. Princess passed away shortly after my graduation. Oh no, it's gonna fucking happen. This was a very difficult time in my life for many different reasons. Her passing being one of them. I won't put my lashes on yet. One evening, I lay on my bed, which was on the floor of my empty room, thinking about life and what it all meant. I couldn't sleep. Fuck. I was lonely. Oh, I can't. I was lonely and my mind was too heavy. But I heard a familiar sound. The faint clicking of little nails made its way towards my room, growing louder the closer it got. A pause as it stopped outside my door, then a heavy sigh. The door then pressed against its jamb in the same manner I heard a million times before. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. I got up and opened the door. I wasn't expecting to see anything, but I did want to check if there was a draft or anything that might have caused the door to move. I came to the conclusion it wasn't the wind. I smiled a little and went back to bed, leaving my door open this time, hoping she might join me once more. Come on. I slept well that night and moved out the house shortly after. Thank you for taking time to read it. I watched all your videos. You truly are a breath of fresh air on YouTube. Hoping you are well. I'm not now. Thank you. Oh my god. Oh, okay, I had to take a few. Here's the deal. This is why people are always like, you know, don't let your dog sleep on the bed. Don't let your dog sleep this. They can sleep on my fucking head, and one of them does. One of my dogs sleeps right here, and I do not care, because one day they won't be here. I want to have all the joy I can with them while they are here. As long as they behave. Thank you so much for that story. I'm going to put in some lashes, and I wonder if the people who live in that house hear similar noise now. And I think you get the same thing with dogs, and I've said this before, but people that live in your house, you know their movements and the sound of their movements. You know who's walking up the stairs. You know how someone walks down the stairs. You know how a dog walks. You know, I can tell the difference between my two dogs walking. You know how they slam themselves against things, against you sometimes, you know. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to stick on some lashes and cry. Well, this is a finished look. Of course it ended up purple. I was going for pink and blue, which make purple. But it just happened. Fell in tie-dye because all my clothes were becoming tie-dye. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and thank you so much for all your amazing stories. Keep them coming in. I have loads. I have thousands. So we are trying to get through them all. If you have a story yourself, keep them coming in. Send them right here to this email address. The audio stories you hear are picked from more recent because there's not as many. So if you send it in as an audio, you're more likely to hear it sooner than a written story. But still, send in your written stories, absolutely. Don't forget to check out the rest of this playlist. I think are we nearly in the 60 episodes now? So yeah, thank you so much for joining me. Please give this video a huge thumbs up. If you liked it, share it with friends. Subscribe, comment, do everything you have to. And I will see you very, very soon. Thanks. Bye.